Evening. How's everybody doing today?
Doing good.
Y'all, I need tonight. I need a break. This has been a crazy week. Y'all probably saw me on the phone out there. I've been at work since 7:15 to 7 at night. Had two planes, well, a plane and a helicopter flying, and they were over in Cortland, and I couldn't do anything about it, and they're not seeing each other. I'll tell you all about it someday, but that's outside of here. We get to step away from all that for a little bit, which is great. And
They can't see each other?
uh,
In the dark? That's not good.
well, yeah, they physically see each other. The communication equipment between the two, my equipment, wasn't working. But I could see the plane from my spot. Generally, we see it about 30 miles. If on a good day, we saw them all the way to Muscle Shoals, 82 kilometers away. That's 50 miles. Anyway, there's good times, there's bad times at work. But I don't have to worry about that right now because we get to talk about Mordecai. Mordecai, indeed. I should have had everybody do their homework and read Esther, the whole book. Mordecai's name appears 56 times in the New King James. And okay, anybody want to guess how many of those times appear outside of the book of Esther?
3.
Okay,
No, not
incorrect.
Dang it.
Any other guesses?
24.
Incorrect. Who? 100? Yeah.
None.
Two times.
I was close.
You were real close. You were real close. Yeah, 56 times, but only 2 times appear outside of there. So we'll get into those 2 times here in just a second. But he's introduced in Esther 2, 5 through 7. Y'all listen to what it says about him. I'll just read it unless anybody else wants to. Anyway, Esther 2, starting at verse 5 through 7. Now there was in the citadel of Susa a Jew of the tribe of Benjamin, named Mordecai, the son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, who had been carried into exile from Jerusalem by Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, among those taken captive with Jehoiakim, king of Judah. Mordecai had a cousin named Hadassah, whom he had brought up because she had neither father nor mother. This young woman, who was also known as Esther, had a lovely figure and was beautiful. Mordecai had taken her as his own daughter when her father and mother died. So, in these 3 verses, there's a whole bunch of stuff laid out about him. So, one, he's a Jew from the tribe of Benjamin. That's going to come into play here in a minute. We'll get to this other point. But he's a tribe of Benjamin. He lived in Susa, and that's essentially the capital of Persia. Susa is the name of the town. His great-grandfather, Kish, had been taken by Nebuchadnezzar. And 4, he acted as a father to Esther. So when Esther was selected as one of the virgins to possibly be the next queen for King Xerxes, Mordecai helped advise her to reveal her Jewish background, and Esther was crowned queen. Advised her not to reveal her what am I trying to say? Lineage. Yeah, her lineage. So, 14 facts. These came from a Jewish rabbi, so I don't agree with every single one, but we're going to lay them out here. Things that we do know was that he was a leader of the Jews during Purim. Purim is now a holiday celebrated by the Jews. It is the day of their... It celebrates the story of Esther. And every day on the day of Purim, the story of Esther is read out loud. And every time that you read about the bad guy, Haram, there's usually some boos and hisses that come forth from the crowd when they read all 10 chapters of Esther here. Yes, sir?
Purim was the release when they were supposed to be killed.
Yes.
But yet they got the thing turned on them.
Yes, yeah, that's the turnaround there in chapter 8 or so. but everybody remembers the story of Esther, where Esther's, well, the queen of, we could do a whole quarter on just the book of Esther. The king has got all this power and wealth. He invites all these other kings there, and he's showing off his great power and wealth. And then he says, "Hey, bring my queen out here. I want to show her off too." And she's like, "I ain't gonna do it." Well, how would that make the king feel? Pretty mad, because he's got control of the whole world, but he doesn't have control of his wife. And he's like, "Hey, look, I just asked you to come out here," and she says, So he's like, "All right, you're gone." I don't know if he had her killed off or what, but she was replaced by, he essentially had a competition of sorts, and Esther was brought in, and we read the story about how, we'll get into one more thing here. Hold that thought. Mordecai, this guy says that he was a descendant of Saul, King Saul. The book of Esther, which Mordecai either authored or helped co-author, describes himself as the son of Yair, son of Shimei, son of Kish, the son of Benjamin. Well, Shimei and Kish are both names of people closely related to King Saul, who was also of the tribe of Benjamin. So if you follow along that logic, then maybe he was related there. His lineage was back all the way back up to King Saul. Don't know.
Well, one of the things that Nebuchadnezzar did, he took the royalty.
Mhm.
So he would,
Yes.
within that, even though he was in the upper crust of the Jewish nation.
Okay.
So that's very,
Yeah. So yeah, he took the upper crust. Yeah, and so he took the Jehoiakim, and then also along with him, folks close to him, part of that upper crust there. We know how he adopted Hadassah. This guy, also said that he was a prophet, but in that there's some Jewish scriptures saying that he was a prophet. But he advised Hadassah, Esther. We know how he was her advisor there. His Hebrew name was Petakiah. But like Esther, he used the Persian name there. He was able to speak a whole bunch of different languages. That probably helped out a bunch. So he was able to speak multiple languages and get messages out quickly, and also to help understand things that were being said about him and about other people, which really helps. Let's see. Here's the interesting one. He was the first to be referred to as a Jew. Okay, so do a quick little word search in the Bible, and it shows up there in I think Ezra and Nehemiah first, and then later in Esther. But the word Jew, chronologically, first appears with Mordecai. So he's a great Torah scholar because he knew the word, the Bible as they had it then. So he invested a bunch of his time and energy into knowing the scriptures there. Let's see. How was he introduced all the way back there in verse 5? What tribe was he of? Benjamin. So I think the King James says that he was a Benjamite. So, okay, it describes him as of the tribe of Benjamin there. Where is it here? He is referred to as Yehudi, or a Jew. Yehudi, yeah, it's a funny word.
Right.
Yehudi, yeah. I first heard of it as there was a kind of a secret experiment with a plane in World War II. They put a whole bunch of lights on it. I'm not sure what it was about, but they called it the Yehudi lights. But Yehudi is another word for Jew. That typically associates him with the tribe of Judah, right? So it makes a sense that you can get Jew from the word Judah. A lot of folks say that the word Judah comes from, or Jew comes from the nation of Judah, and Judea. You've got the 10 tribes that went off to the northern kingdom, then you got the 2 tribes of, Judah and Benjamin that went off and became Judea. Well, they were all exiled. Essentially, the northern tribe just kind of disappeared. They were sent off to unknown lands, and it only takes a generation or two, and then a people can be no more. But the tribes of Judah and Benjamin there were able to return back to Jerusalem, back to the Holy Land. So that is the traditional following of the word Jew coming from Judah or Judea. The other one, I thought this was actually pretty neat. If you read carefully in it, you've got this essentially the whole thing could have potentially been avoided, because you've got Mordecai there who says, I don't want to bow down to Haman. And then Haman gets upset. And he says, all right, we're just going to kill all the Jews. And then the whole sequence there unfolds, and we know how it works out. But the whole thing could have been potentially avoided had Mordecai just bowed down, and then wouldn't have to deal, or we wouldn't have the rest of the story there. But, so by him not bowing down, okay, so it was inappropriate to not bow down to Haman there, because Haman was pretty high on up there. But Mordecai had a precedent that he wasn't setting the precedent. He was following a precedent that was set by another guy a long time before. Long time ago, or a long time before, his ancestor, Benjamin, was almost sold as a slave. There was a very high-ranking official who says, hey, I want to keep this guy. I want him here to stay with me. But his brother, Judah, stood up and says, no, please don't do it. Do anything you can. Or I'll do anything I can, but please don't take him. Y'all remember what story that was? That was Joseph. The high-ranking official that he was begging for was, unbeknownst to everybody, was their own brother, Joseph. So anyway, Judah was standing up for him. So Mordecai was saying that, okay, yeah, even though I'm of the tribe of Benjamin there, I have great respect for my great, however many greats, uncle, Judah. I'm going to look up to him and therefore take on his name, Judah, and become a Jew. That's another thing where the name Jew could potentially come from. Anyway, so we're going on to that because Judah at the time, he could have lived at peace with his neighbors. No, he was the embodiment of the exiled Israel who had to walk a thin line there. He had to live in peace with his neighbors. He had to follow the laws and the customs of the land in Egypt. And he had to pray for peace of the regime, but he also had the courage of his convictions to stand up and defend his ideals. He says, all right, I'll do anything you want, but my brother Benjamin has to go home to our father. So I'm standing up for his ideals there. Mordecai was standing up for his ideals. He knew that the law forbid a Jew from bowing down to Haman. For him, the law is the law, and he says that's enough. And he says, I don't have to bow down to him. In fact, I can't bow down to him, even though everybody else did. Well, both Judah and Mordecai's actions were vindicated as history unfolded there. God was going to take care of them. No harm came to either one of them there. Mordecai there, he led by example. He had a great sense of pride, implanted a sense of pride into the hearts of all the people there. So a lot of folks were looking up at him. Starting on page 4 of 9. Go ahead.
I was going to say that once the two nations were carried into exile, you see this pattern repeat a lot where Jewish people are put in a position of trying to be forced to bow down to somebody or some being other than God. You see it obviously here with Haman, and Mordecai refuses, but then think about in the book of Daniel, you have Daniel does the same thing. He refuses to pray to anybody but God, and of course Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego don't bow down to the image. So it's like once they got carried off, of course, funny enough, their own idolatry is what got them in exile. But then you do have examples of the Jews like Mordecai refusing to give in to any sort of idolatry, even in the midst of pressure like that.
Yep. Yeah, there's multiple cases there. Yep. Good point. We know how he refused to bow down to Haman, and that's what precipitated the whole story that we have here in Esther. He told Esther to speak to the king. He was her advisor there. Later, he became the king's prime minister, which is an interesting thing. This guy says that his tomb is in Iran. Well, they said that nearly 2,500 years after the events of Purim, the Iranian Jews and Muslims are quick to point out exactly where his tomb and Hadassah's tomb, Esther's tomb, are in Iran. I don't fully agree with that, because this guy was also saying that, two ways that you can read his lineage there. If he's the great-grandson who came into, great-grandson of, exactly who it was, came in there later, Kish, yeah, then it would make sense that he may have died there. But if he came in earlier, with the original stuff, in that, yeah, his great-grandfather was Kish there. Anyway, I digress. Because in Ezra, the other two cases where we read about him, Ezra chapter 2, verses 1 and 2, these are the captives that got to return home to Jerusalem. Ezra 2, 1 and 2, he says, "Now these are the people of the province who came back from captivity, of those who had been carried away, whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried away to Babylon, and who returned to Jerusalem and Judah, everyone to his own city. These came with Zerubbabel were Jeshua, Nehemiah, Shariah, Realiah, Mordecai, Bilshan, Mispar, Bigvai, Rehum, and Baanah. The number of these men were of the people of Israel," and it keeps going. I just mispronounced a whole bunch of names there. But Mordecai, one of the two times that the name is mentioned, it has got to be the same guy, outside of Esther. Second one, Nehemiah, chapter 7, verses 6 through 8. Nehemiah 7, 6 through 8. "These are the people of the province who came back from the captivity of those who had been carried away, whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried away, and who returned to Jerusalem and Judah, everyone to his city. Those who came with Zerubbabel were Jeshua, Nehemiah, Azariah, Ramiah, Nehemiah, Mordecai, Bilshan, Mispar, Bigvai, Nahum, and Baanah. The number of the men of the people of Israel, the sons of Peroah, 2,172, and it keeps going, but I mispronounced a whole bunch of names, but there he is again. If I'm mispronouncing Mordecai, then I'm mispronouncing it for every single time. It's got to be the same guy. So to me, that tells me he's not buried in Iran. He made it back to Jerusalem, and he's probably buried there. More interesting fun facts. We got a lot of time left. How many times is God mentioned in the book of Esther? 0. Somebody brought that out to me and it's like, that's for real? God's name is not mentioned specifically in the book of Esther anywhere. But, all right, I'm going to pull a squirrel. For Vacation Bible School, Steve does the hippo song, talking about the hippo. God's fingerprints are everywhere, just to show how much he cares. Well, God's fingerprints, that song was going all through my head while I was putting this stuff together, because God's fingerprints are all over the book of Esther. His providence is shown there and everywhere. It shows how he's working behind the scenes. That God redeems his people through faith and courage through one strategically placed woman and her cousin. Her cousin being Mordecai there. It could possibly be that God did not want his name or title appearing there because of the circumstances of its writing. So if Mordecai were writing the book, well, he's got to remain some type of cover, right? Because he's in a pretty high position, even before he became prime minister there. So he wrote this under the king's authority, King Xerxes or Ahasuerus. So he may have had to write it under the polytheistic tone of the time, because everybody was believing in one God may have rubbed some people the wrong way. So he had to, in a sense, protect himself by not placing God's name anywhere in it. And so it could have protected him from the king or any other enemies who would go after him. And one thing about the book is that fasting is mentioned a whole bunch of times in there. There are six feasts, six separate feasts that are mentioned throughout the book. Yet Esther goes in and she chose to fast for 3 days before confronting the king. What do we typically read about people who go to fast? They're about to approach God with something. And Mark did a lesson on fasting one time. It's something we probably ought to look at. It's a very stark contrast when you've got this people who are eating all the time. I forget how long the king's feast was when he was showing off his kingdom for everybody, but it was a long time. It was a big party. Go ahead.
One of the reasons why she was fasting was because there was a rule that if you come into the king's presence without being called, if he doesn't lift the sepulcher to you,
Yeah. If he didn't say, okay, come here. So
that's what she told Mordecai, that she was afraid to go to him. And then Mordecai says the thing that, how do you know that you've been selected to be the one that saves your people? Because you're not going to survive either, because you are a Jew too.
And essentially, he's saying that, look, God's kingdom is going to survive, but you may not. So who knows if this is your purpose for such a time as this? And I just untied my shoe. But yeah, so she fasted 3 days, which is a stark contrast and all these other feasts that are going on with the Persians there. And she also asked other Jews to join her. She said in Esther 4:16, "Go gather all the Jews who are in Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my attendants will fast as you do." And it's understood that a lot of folks, or a lot of examples were given, will fast before we go ask or for God's help there. And so even though God's name isn't explicitly mentioned there, Esther is involved in a religious observance there to supplicate for God's mercy. It's an interesting thing that's got more of God's fingerprints on it. And it could be that God didn't want his title or name mentioned there because he wants to show his providence. He says, look, I'm going to set this thing up and I'm going to run it from behind the scenes without getting any direct acknowledgement for myself. I want to show that I'm going to take care of you even though I'm not there, for lack of better words. So
I feel like it kind of shows that it's a great example of what you're saying, because you have all these stories of like David and like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego that are thrown into the fiery furnace, and it's like this big, huge success, and it's like, wow, this is like a huge act of God. But this is like showing you that it doesn't have to be a huge act or like a, like Esther was extremely brave to go in front of the king because he could have killed her, but like she was gonna die if she didn't,
Right.
because she was Jew. So like I just feel like that's a great example of it doesn't have to be like this huge act of bravery to do something for God's kingdom. It can be something smaller and still have an amazing impact.
yeah,
too.
it could. The small stuff can still make a difference.
Yeah. Just like the lesser known characters.
Mhm.
It's perfect for the whole study.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah. So we've got a lot to learn about these smaller people that we just read over,
Yeah.
but there's so much history behind them. I'm breaking the rule because Mordecai, he's a little bit more known, but anyway. Mordecai attributes divine sovereignty without explicitly calling it as such. Esther 4:14, he says to Esther there, if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this. God's put you in a elevated position. Use it. You can help us all out. And so that same principle applies to us. We all have a particular sphere of influence. We have a particular position of authority or something. We should exercise that authority over whatever it is. I may just have authority over an anthill, but I can do what I need to for God's purpose to protect that anthill. Bad example, but yeah, God's got his particular plans, and we need to see those plans and help make it happen through our own lives. So it clearly reveals God through all these through the entire book, even though his name isn't exactly written out there.
Did he ever say why Mordecai did not respect
Haman?
is it because it was going against his
You know,
honor of the king? Did he save the king?
Mhm.
What was it about
What was it about Haman that he didn't like?
that he felt like he could not?
I don't know if it exactly says.
It doesn't say that.
I don't think it does. Yeah, but it could be that Haman was a polytheistic man. He may have had or worn some type of amulet or idol around his neck, and who did not acknowledge the one true and living God.
Well, it says in chapter 3 that he refused to bow down or pay homage to Haman. And so I think he honored the king by saving the king's life, but there's a difference between giving honor to someone in authority and actually bowing down to someone in authority. And I guess you kind of got to read between the lines, but the inference is Haman felt convicted that if I bow down, that crosses the line from I honor them to I worship them, which would have violated his.
That could be.
Yeah.
More like
Yeah.
David and, Daniel and, the others, it says, I can't
Yeah.
bow down
And it could have been that, that Haman was placed.
He seemed like a faithful man.
Mhm.
And he did well by Esther. And he did all the things that, he was an honorable man because when he found out about the plot, he didn't do that for self-gain. He did it because it's the right thing to do.
You see also his faith in that statement you read in chapter 4, verse 14, where he says to Esther, if you keep silent at this time, relief and deliverance will rise for the Jews from another place. Well, why is he so confident in that? I mean, I think the only reason he would be was that Mordecai had faith God was going to deliver the Jews sometime at some way or another. He didn't know how it was going to happen. He thought Esther had the opportunity to be a person God acted through, but he had faith. He said, God's going to do this at some point if you don't, but maybe he's put you in this place to take advantage of this
Yeah.
opportunity.
Essentially, he's saying to her, you've got the chance to save your own life right here. And this is the way that I would advise you to do it. And if you don't, you're going to die. But if you do, then you'll live and you'll save us. But God's going to save us either way. But it's essentially, this is the way to save your life. So, we'll fast forward a little bit. Okay, so we know what happened to Haman. And it's actually pretty, well, everybody just read the book of Esther. And we'll spare all the details. But Haman is executed, right? But, so now Esther's work is done, right? Mordecai's work is done, right? No, far from it. Anybody remember what the law of the Medes and the Persians was? It's mentioned several times. I think it was even in the book of Daniel too.
Couldn't rescind.
Nothing could be rescinded. If the king signed it, it says this will happen. Nobody can rescind it, even me. So that goes back to Daniel when they're like, look, if we catch anybody who doesn't worship the king, then he's going to be thrown into the den of lions. And the king's like, hey, this sounds good. We'll sign it. This is the law of the Medes and the Persians. Even I, the king, can't rescind it. So it's law. Well, they catch Daniel. He's bowing down and, hey, look, king, we found him. And so now the king's like, I have to kill you, Daniel. Even though he had to be pretty close there to the king, but the king's like, I just signed a law, and even I can't rescind it. This is the law of the Medes and the Persians. You have to be thrown there into the den. So he threw him in there in the den. We know how the king was up all night long. Daniel probably slept better in that den with the lions than the king did. And who came down there early the next morning? But the king. He's saying, Daniel, are you okay? And Daniel says, O king, live forever. It's a salutation that they would give the king at the time. And so, anyway, it's the law of the Medes and Persians then. It's the law of the Medes and the Persians here. The king had signed a decree, kind of sponsored by Haman, says, we're going to kill all the Jews at some spontaneous time in the future. It's going to be a time we're just going to kill them all. Kind of like, okay, who's a Star Wars fan? Order 66? Like, all right, when we lay this thing down, kill all the Jedi in the movies. But at this time, we're going to kill all the Jews all at once. Well, Haman's dead, but this edict is still in effect. So how can it be rescinded? It can't. When was the time set? I don't.
There was a time set, so it could be.
Yeah. It could be way in the future. It could be way in the future, or it could be next Tuesday. I don't know. If there was a time, somebody let me know. But the king says, look, Mordecai, and now he's promoted to prime minister. So also, okay, he's prime minister. Where is his cousin? Esther, Hadassah. She's queen. They are the two highest positions in the land, short of the king himself. So the king says, hey, why don't you do this? So I can't rescind it, but what about, as you being prime minister, you can make a law and sign it with my own signet ring, saying that if anybody touches the Jews, y'all have the right to kill them back. Kill them back. That's, you know what I mean. So nobody's going to touch the Jews. So if this order comes down, and if anybody starts attacking you, and also that rule to kill all the Jews gave those folks rights to plunder them too. Go ahead.
It was the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar.
Okay.
That was the day that was set to basically the
Day of
Order
annihilation.
66 day, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And okay. But so Mordecai writes this counter edict saying that we're going to defend ourselves, and then that's where Purim comes from. And where was that? Oh, another neat thing about it too. Okay, where is it? In verse 13 of chapter 8. I'll just read that, if I can read that. I can't read that because I can't find the verse, the number there. Essentially, he's telling them that the copy of this decree made in Susa be rushed out everywhere. The Greek historian Herodotus, he recorded that the Persian Empire was connected by a whole bunch of postal stations set up 14 miles apart. That was the original Pony Express. We think that we were all neat by making this Pony Express, 150, 175 years ago? But the Persians had it a long time before that. So we got this decree and sped it along using the same postal route. And so Herodotus' description of the diligence of these message carriers gave us the famous words, "Neither snow nor rain nor heat nor gloom of night stays these courageous couriers from the swift completion of their appointed rounds." That's the same stuff that's up above the post office in New York to get the news out quickly. He used this same postal service to get this news out quickly to protect the Jews there. Anyway, I'm out of time because I see the teen class is back. Anyway, that's what I found up on Mordecai. There's 3 more pages of stuff on him. Who's next? Y'all, I will be out of town next week. I think Brother Ed's got something. But I think he was going to, I won't go into it, but he mentioned the Ethiopian eunuch. But after that, give me some ideas. Who's got our Devo?